There could be different ways to translate it, but Simcha, that's the word from the Torah, Simcha. So very interesting subject, really deep subject. I'm just putting out some of my own reflections on the subject. It's not comprehensive or going to the depths of it. I'm not I can't claim to be able to go to the depths of this discussion. It's a really deep one. Simcha is a very, very important idea. Happiness, what is it? Yeah. So really, let me start out. I want to ask 3 questions about it. I'm going to be addressing 3 questions about Simcha. The first one is, is it important to be happy? Is it an obligation to be happy? Do we see the obligation from the Torah? Yeah, so that's one question. Okay, one second, we'll get back to that. Second question I want to address is, where does it come from? What brings about Simcha? Right? And the third question on happiness. Third question I want to address is, how can we do that? Can we make that happen? What do we have to do to try to bring that out? Hold on one second. So 3 questions. 3 questions I'm going to be talking about are, is it important, an obligation to be b'simcha? What's the psychology of it? Where does Simcha come from? And the third thing is, can we make that happen ourselves? There's something we could do to bring that out. That's the 3 questions I want to talk about. Hirsch, you want to say something?
Well, what is the title of your shiur?
Simcha, happiness.
Simcha with a Rothman.
Yeah. Okay. So first thing, let me ask you this question. Can you think of any sources from the Torah where it describes the obligation to be happy, to be b'simcha? Yeah. Very good. Okay, I'm going to write this pasuk. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha.
Where's that from?
That is from Tehillim. We say it every day in the pasuk L'Zimra, Mizmor L'Todah. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha. We are His people. We're the sheep of His pasture. Therefore, we should serve Him with simcha. So here you see an idea that's an obligation from Tehillim. This is to serve Hashem with simcha. What's another source? V'samachta b'chagecha. Beautiful. Okay, v'samachta b'chagecha. You will rejoice in your Yom Tov, in your Chag. That's another one. Anyone else? The third one? There's another really major one that it says in the discussion of the brachot and the klalot. Do you guys know this pasuk? Yossi? This is a very important one. It's a wild one, a little bit. There's a pasuk that says like this. It says, in Parshas, I think it's Bechukotai. It goes through all the lists of, if we do Hashem's will, we'll get all these blessings. If we don't, we get all these curses. And in the middle of the curses, it says a very strong sentence. It says, Tachat asher lo avadata et Hashem b'simcha ubetuv levav. I think it's levav merov kol. It says the reason for all of the curses, which are going to come on Klal Yisrael in the period of exile, is because you didn't serve Hashem with simcha, ubetuv levav, and with a good heart, from out of all the abundance that you have. So it says a very strong thing. It says, not only says that is simcha, we have to serve Hashem with simcha, and that we have to be happy on the Yom Tov. It also says that because we didn't serve Hashem with simcha, that's why all the curses come on us. If any troubles come on the Jewish nation, and troubles going to come in the course of the exile, that's because we didn't serve Hashem with simcha. So those 3 psukim are a source that we have to serve Hashem with simcha. And if you don't, it's a big problem for the Jewish nation. And if you do, that's a very good thing.
Is it Baruch Shemar, Asher Nashve, or Yishtabach?
After Baruch Shemar is Mizmor L'Soda, where it says it. Right after Baruch Shemar in the Zuk Sfard. Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha, it says there. In any case. So, Okay, so there you see. So far you see the question was, are we obligated to be b'simcha? So far you see a partial answer. When you in connection to serving Hashem, divine service, we are obligated to be b'simcha. You have to serve Hashem with simcha. Okay, now, what about when you're not serving Hashem? That's another question. So, are you obligated b'simcha then? Right? What about in general? Is there obligation to be happy apart from that?
Well, you're obligated to always serve Hashem, so it doesn't.
Okay, that's interesting what you're saying. You're obligated to always serve. What about when you're resting? What about when you are relaxing?
You're supposed to be serving Hashem in your relaxation, your resting.
How do you do that?
So you're not resting for yourself, you're resting for Hashem. Everything you do is for Shem Shemayim.
Okay, so they're very good. Nice. So therefore, so you're saying that it turns out that it's the same. The one answers both. If you're obligated to serve Hashem and you're obligated with simcha, with happiness, and you're obligated to serve Hashem all the time, that means you're obligated to be happy all the time, right? That's a very interesting point. Yes.
It also means that having happiness that's not in service of Hashem is not really a mitzvah at all.
Right.
Well,
Okay, that's a good point also. Okay. All right, we'll get to that also. That's interesting. Oh, yeah. What else?
But it's also like that the simcha, what the person have. It's also like a expression of the level of emunah he has. Like,
Very good.
why you'll be sad if you know that you child of Israel, you from Hashem. This and that.
Oh, very good.
And that's also like the way of.
Fantastic. Okay, you guys are touching on all the points which I wanted to bring out here. Perfect. Beautiful. Fantastic. You hear what Michal saying? This is another reason why it makes sense that we should be happy all the time, because that's an expression of faith, right? If Hashem runs the world and everything is ultimately going according to what He wants, everything is ultimately good, so then all the time it's appropriate to be happy. Because if you're not happy, that implies that something isn't good, right?
And it's a lack of faith. Right?
It's a lack of faith. Very good. Okay, correct. Nice. Okay, very good. So you're preempting some of the points I wanted to bring out. So let me now show you. So it's interesting. There's other psukim also. I want to point out there's other psukim too that sort of like support what we're saying now. There's another pasuk. There's a lot of psukim talk about simcha in the Torah. Another one says, Natata. Here, let me write it here. Nasata simcha b'libi, simcha b'libi, me'et daganam, v'tirusham rabu, tirusham rabu. It says, I think it's in the fourth parak in Tehillim, it says, you have put simcha into my heart more than than all the affluence of the evil people, more than all their grain and all their wine that they have. Hashem, you have put simcha in my heart. So you saw that being happy is something very desirable. I want to tell you another pasuk also. The pasuk is in Mizmor Shir Yom Shabbat. It says, Ki samachti b'falach, you have made me happy with your works. Right? So here you see two psukim. They're not specifically the context of serving Hashem. It's just a state of being, like Michal is saying. You see it even out of the concept of serving Hashem. Even in general, you have put happiness into my heart. So I'm not jealous of people that are very wealthy and evil, right? I have something intrinsic. And also at Mizmor Shir Yom Shabbat, when you think about all the things that Hashem does and all of you're happy about Hashem's works, so you also have simcha. There's many other psukim also. There's another one which talks about the Torah being a source of simcha too. I just want to put these out a little bit. It says, Pekudei Hashem Yesharim Mesamche Lev. Mesamche Lev. The mitzvahs of Hashem are righteous, they rejoice the heart. So here you see a little bit or you see that Torah brings about simcha also. It's interesting, that's the other way. You see over here that you have to serve Hashem with simcha, and here you said that actually learning Torah brings simcha too. But in the psukim I just said before, you also see a general concept of simcha, like Michal was saying. You said you put simcha to my heart more than all the affluence of other people. I'm more happy than them. I have it from Hashem itself. I have simcha. And also in Mizmor Shir Yom Shabbat, we're talking about the gratefulness we have. It talks about Samachti b'falecha. I have rejoiced in all your works. Okay, so here that's some of the psukim. There's many more, but I want to show you a little bit Rabbi Nachman here, a couple of sources that go into this. So, okay. So we see for sure from the Torah that there is an obligation to serve Hashem with simcha. There's 3 psukim there. Say it to Farish. You have to serve Hashem on Yom Tov, right? You have to serve Hashem, you have to be happy on Yom Tov. You have to serve Hashem with simcha, and it says if you didn't serve Hashem with simcha, you had all these curses. Now, also you see that there's something good about being happy all the time, right? That it's a very good thing. Even you talk about the psukim, the learning Torah brings out simcha. You see that simcha is a very lofty quality. So it's a very good thing. Now, Rabbi Nachman says something interesting over here also. Rabbi Nachman says, we were bringing about, Rabbi Nachman says like this, let's turn aside. Mitzvah gedola liot b'simcha tamid. Rabbi Nachman said that it's a great mitzvah to be always happy. Litgaber l'archik mi'atzvut l'marishkora b'kol kocho. That you have to strengthen yourself and push away sadness and depression with all of your strength. So that's what he says. That you have to be happy all the time. It's a mitzvah gedola, a great mitzvah to be happy all the time and to push away with great effort sadness and depression. And he goes and talks about a little bit. Let me read a little bit more from what he says. Very interesting thing. He says there are great benefits from this, from being besimcha. V'kol cholat habayin al adam. All the illnesses that come on a person, kulam bayin rak mekil kol simcha. They all come because of a lack of simcha, because the simcha is not whole in the person. It's disturbed, it's messed up, it's interrupted. So all illness comes because of a lack of simcha. Ki yesh asar minei negina. Okay, this is a little bit mystical. It's very interesting though, because there are 10 types of song. He says, shem bechinat simcha, which are aspects of happiness. K'mo shekatuv alei asur v'lei naver alei higiyon bechinor. Talks about a 10-stringed instrument. Ki samachti Shem b'falach. That's in Mizmor Shir Yom Shabbat. That he plays on a 10-stringed instrument of a melech, and he says, because you have made me happy with your work. So Reb Nachman sees a hint there. He says, Ve'elu yud minei negina ba'in b'toch asar minei defikin. These 10 types of song come into the 10 arteries of the person. They're called arteries? Yeah, the arteries, yeah. The main blood flow, you know? He says there's 10 of them, okay, however that works. And that brings him to life. When the blood flows, the person comes to life. So music, which is representing simcha, it brings to life the person. Therefore, when there is some kind of a disturbance in the simcha, there's something wrong with the person's happiness, it's missing, it's messed up. So what happens is, that which is expressed by the 10 types of song, then comes sickness into the 10 artery flow in the body. So then, because the flow of the blood becomes disturbed because there's a lack of simcha, because there's happiness in the person. Because all sickness is concluded in the flow of the blood flow. And every type of song is included in the 10 types of song. So he says these 2 things are connected. When a person's besimcha, a person's happy, so then his blood flows and he's healthy. And when he's unhappy, then the blood is not flowing well, and then he can get sick. And he says, "V'gam chachmei rofim harichu b'zeh." Even the doctors also agreed. Shekol cholat adimar shkara basus. All sicknesses come through unhappiness and depression. The Rambam also says it's one of the main things he lists as a source of health and well-being is happiness. And the simcha is a great cure. In the future, the simcha will become very great. I just want to tell you something on the side here, which really I find very interesting in a modern doctor. There's a person in New York. His name is Dr. Sarno. So this is very interesting to me. So he was a doctor, he's a medical doctor, and he found that people kept coming in all the time with various kinds of problems which he didn't find a physical source for. So he got interested in that and he started researching it. He researched the athletes. And athletes, a lot of times they had something called a slip disc. They get a disc slipped in their spine, right? And it's terrifically painful. They'd be suffering from it. And then he would find other athletes, they also had a slip disc and it wouldn't be painful. So some people it caused them, when one of the vertebrae would out of line, it would cause them pain. One of them, and other ones, the vertebrae would out of line and it wouldn't cause them pain. So he continued his research. This Dr. Sarno, a very interesting person. And he came up with a theory where back pain comes from in particular. But he applied it to other kinds of pains also. And he says, sometimes a person has psychological pain. So psychological pain is very hard for us. Maybe we acknowledge it not when we're suffering something inside. He says there's a device, the body has a device, or the person has a device, a subconscious device, that he transfers it to physical pain. There's a transfer that goes on. So he says the way that works is, so that was his first theory, that lots of physical pains, like different things like arthritis, like fatigue syndrome, back pains, headaches, all kinds of things, these are when the person's stressed. And because he's stressed about something he's not ready to deal with, so it goes into the physical and distracts him. So it's sort of a survival technique. That's what he said. And he says, and how does the body do that? It slows down the blood flow. Like subconsciously, we can't control the blood flow consciously, but there's some kind of a subconscious mechanism that slows it down. So therefore, when the blood is flowing through the spine, let's say a person has a slip disc, as the blood is flowing down, if it's slowed down, so not enough oxygen gets to the muscles, and there's back pain. And if it has to go around a slip disc, then there's even more back pain, because there's so little oxygen there. But if it's flowing quickly like it's supposed to be, so then the person's healthy, even if it has to go around the slip disc. So that was basically his theory. His theory is that many pains that people have come from a psychological source. It's the mind, it's the system like diverting the suffering, the pain into something physical, so it takes your mind off the psychological. And it does that by slowing down your blood flow. That was his theory. And he's great. He cures back pains, like thousands, tens of thousands of people, all kinds of pains. They come to him, he has a clinic, he's amazing. So I learned how to do it also when I was young, when I was in my 20s. I had back pains, and I studied this, and they went away. And it's easy, like back pains are nothing. They're purely psychological. Once you know that, then it starts to go away. 95%. They're almost never structural. If they are, then they are, but they're usually not. And other kinds of things also. So it's just like Rabbi Nachman says. It's very interesting. It's a little bit of a tangent, but I wanted to tell you this. I want to share it because it's fascinating. That he says the blood flow is like the simcha is like music, and they're connected. There's 10 types of music, and there are 10 types of arteries, however that works, and that's the blood flow. And when you're not happy, the blood slows down, and that causes illness. Exactly like Dr. Sarna says. Fascinating, right? So anyway, Rabbi Nachman says, mitzvah goliyot b'simcha tamid, and that brings health. Okay, so here you have in Rabbi Nachman. So Rabbi Nachman tells, from the psukim we saw that it's an obligation to be b'simcha when you're serving Hashem. And that makes sense, right? Because we're serving Hashem. If we serve Hashem without happiness, so then it means we're not appreciating the relationship. Every relationship has to be with simcha. You have to be happy that you're married. Happy with your wife. You have to express your happiness. That's how you have a relationship. If you go around, not happy in your relationships, that's not a good relationship. Same thing with Hashem Yisbarach. You have to be happy in relationships. You have to serve Hashem with simcha. That makes sense, right? But now, what about being happy in general? So we see that being happy in general is also something positive. Tov describes something positive. Is it an obligation? So Rabbi Nachman says yes. Rabbi Nachman says it's an obligation to be happy tamid, and it's also curative. In the future, there's going to be great happiness coming down. So it's a obligation to be happy all the time. So you guys said the two things that I wanted to say, because people challenge Rabbi Nachman. They said, where does it say that? Where does it say it's a mitzvah to be happy all the time? Maybe not. People say, they make a joke out of it. They say, it's simcha liot b'mitzvah tamid. They turn it around. They say, no, it's not a mitzvah to be happy all the time. It's happy to be in the mitzvah. But that's a mitzvah to be happy. Who says? Where does it say it's a mitzvah to be happy? So they asked that question, Rabbi Nachman. But the answer is, you guys just said, you two guys gave the answer. One answer is, that we can serve Hashem all the time. As the Chavos Levavos says, everything we do can be divine service, right? If you are being friendly with a person, you're fulfilling the mitzvah of Ahavta Recha Kamocha. You know, if you're wherever you're doing, there's 6 mitzvahs that we have all the time. You have to have love of Hashem, fear of Hashem. You know, not to go after your eyes, not to go after your heart. There's constant. We're doing mitzvahs all the time. We're serving Hashem. So if so, and it's a mitzvah to serve Hashem b'simcha, then it's a mitzvah to be a simcha tamid. It's clear. That's number one. So all the time, and even there's a Gemara like this. The Gemara says Rabbi Eliezer was sick. The great Tana Eliezer was sick, and his Talmidim came to cheer him up. He was down. He was a little discouraged. He was very sick. So they started saying all the good things he'd done in his life, and he wasn't interested. So what? What's it going to do? That doesn't help me. That doesn't cheer me up. I did this. I learned so much. I taught so much. Doesn't matter. That doesn't speak to me. And then one of them said, suffering is precious because it purifies a person. And he said, oh, that's good. I like that. You know. So that means that you could be besimcha even when you're. That's what he wanted to be besimcha. We told him that there's a purpose even in suffering. That's also part of Hashem's world. And so that's I sort of skipped, but that's the idea, more like what Michal is saying. I wanted to say what Michal says also. It's a mitzvah to serve Hashem Tamid, partly because you could always do mitzvahs, and you have to do mitzvahs with simcha. Another thing is, it's a mitzvah to be b'simcha Tamid. I'll get back to this story with Rabbi Eliezer, explain that more. There's a mitzvah to be b'simcha Tamid, always be happy, because why? That shows you have faith. That shows you have appreciation of Hashem. You know, if you're going around unhappy, then you think that something is wrong with the world. If you go around happy, that shows that you appreciate Hashem's world and you realize that everything is latov. Everything's ultimately good, even the things that are very difficult. And if you're temporarily unhappy from something, which is normal, so you'll move back to being okay with things. You know, you have loss, you have difficulty, you have traumas, but you get happy again because it's a mitzvah to be happy tamid. Why is the mitzvah happy? Because everything is from Hashem. Even things we don't know that they're good, we believe they are, right? And therefore we turn to things which we do understand, we find ways to cheer ourselves up. So, and that's the story with Rabbi Eliezer. That's what I meant to say about the story with Rabbi Eliezer. That they came and said, you know, they wanted to cheer him up. He was very sick, they wanted to cheer him up. So they told him, you did good things in the past. That doesn't help me. I want to know in the present what I can do to cheer myself up. They said, well, you can accept the suffering. You realize the suffering is good also. It's going to bring you to somewhere. It's Hashem's plan. So that's like the idea that it's always a mitzvah to be simcha, and it comes through emunah. Okay, so that's that. Now, putting aside this last part of Rabbi Nachman, let's go to the second page here. Now I want to ask another question. So where does simcha come from? What brings about simcha inside a person? Yeah? So I want to show you something very fascinating from the Orcha Tzadikim. He says, Hasimcha. The Orcha Tzadikim, that's a famous Musar Sefer from a Rishon, an anonymous Rishon, called Orcha Tzadikim. And he has a chapter on Simcha. It's a great chapter. It's really worth learning. So he says like this, Simcha Hamida Hazot, Bala Adam Machmat Rov Shava Belibo. Where do you get Simcha from? It comes to a person when he has a lot of deep tranquility in his heart. The Adam Hamasig Tavato, the person who gets what he desires, V'lo Yiralo Devar Hamatziv Oto, nothing happens that causes him to get down. B'zeh Yilo Simcha Tadir, and that way there will be Simcha to him all the time. He'll always be happy. So this, he says an amazing thing, a very surprising thing. He says when you get what you want, you're happy. That's where it comes from. In other words, people, like the depths of the person is what he wants, his ratzon, his will. People want things. When I don't get what I want, I get down. I want things to work out in a certain way. They don't. That challenges my happiness, right? When things do work out, when I get what I want, I get happier. And the Orcha Tzadikim say that's the secret of Simcha. That's where Simcha comes from psychologically. What's the psychological source of happiness? Getting what you want. Okay. Now, so let me read you what he says further. Mishiyesh bo simcha tadir, tadir, he says like Rabbi Nachman, he says someone who's always happy, ya'ir panav, his face lights up. V'zivo mavhik, he shines. V'gufo buri, his body is healthy. Vein zikna memeheret levolav, he doesn't become old. A happy heart, it does good for the whole person, for the body. So, okay, that's. Let me go a little further. Now he goes on and he says, just like Benjamin said, he says, "Harbe ra'od yesh b'simcha u'b'skol." However, there's bad side of simcha. Not all simcha is good. Let's say someone's happy when someone else does badly, stumbles. That's a bad kind of simcha. He goes further. Yesh od simcha, mara kolana. There's another kind of simcha which is bitter, like bitter herbs. You go on road fe niu v'gado v'gezo v'sharaveros. Someone runs after licentiousness and promiscuity and stealing and other averos. Someone's happy to do those things. Usmechim basigam hatavot harod. They're happy because they got what they want. Right? Because that's the psychology of simcha, is when you get what you want, you get happy. So the person gets happy through doing all kinds of bad things. Val elu amar hasmechim lasot ra. They're people that are rejoicing to do evil. Yagilu b'tapuchot ra. They rejoice with perverse behavior. That's bad kind of happiness. He says another one. It's not very long. I was just saying some experts. There's another kind of simcha which is not good. Hamala ashan l'kol mitzvahs. It brings up smoke, steam into all the mitzvot. V'mishkachat yirat Hashem yitbrak milibot b'nei adam. It makes people forget the fear of heaven. People that are getting inebriated all the time. After the simcha, they become unhappy. So there's another kind of simcha. People go after mind-altering experiences and alcohol and other things, and they feel really good about that. And that, in the end, that's not a good thing. So it's very interesting here that the Orchos Dikim is saying is that not every kind of simcha is good. It's a mitzvah to be simcha all the time, but that's in the certain types of simcha. Where does simcha come from? Simcha comes from getting what you want. Now it depends what you want, if it's a good simcha or if it's a bad simcha. So there are people that they're very happy to do bad. They're plundering, they're doing all kinds of stuff, and they're having a great time. So that's very interesting also. So here he says, the Orchos Dikim says that the psychological source of simcha is getting what you want, right? And now Rabbi Nachman says that it's a mitzvah gedolah b'simcha tamid. Now, I'll ask you a question. How can you always get what you want? Right? So the answer is, well, it's sort of like what we said before. This is what I think the answer is. How can you always, if simcha comes from getting what you want, what do you mean you should walk around b'simcha? You're not getting what you want. You're not doing anything. Answer is, what do you want? It depends on your expectations. Depends on the way you look at things. So what if, I think really, there's a simcha for being, this is my mind, this is a thought I have about this, is that a way to be happy all the time is, it's like Michal said. First of all, there's emunah. You have faith that everything's from Hashem. Even things that are hard for you, that seem unfair, even, all things like that, you don't think that they're by accident. When you think that they're by accident, so you won't be happy. You'll start to get stuck on those things which don't seem right to you, that don't seem fair to you, that are frustrating, what you'd like, the way things would like to be, the things you'd like to have, things are getting in your way. So when you focus on those things, so then you will be unhappy. If you think that Hashem runs the world, right, and nothing is arbitrary, and nothing is ultimately bad, so already start to cheer up. And then, if on the basis of that, you also start to have something called gratitude. You start to consciously appreciate the things which you do have, and the things you do understand, right? So the things you don't understand, you say, okay, I don't understand that, that's hard for me, but I have a emunah that there's a reason for that. And the things you do understand, the things that you know are good, you know that you're alive, you know that you you have hands and feet, you have a whole body, or as much as you have, you know that you have good things in your life. You have friends, you have family, you have intelligence, you have creativity, you have potential, you have Torah, you have Avodas Hashem. All the things that you have, you're grateful for all those things. So then, together with the Emunah, that even the things you don't like, even the things are difficult, those things are also okay, you just don't know why. But the things that you do appreciate, so then you're consciously aware of them and you're praising Hashem for them. So what happens is, you can be b'simcha tamid. You can always be b'simcha. So it turns out that's so that's like the third element here. Then so it's like this. So let me just recap. I basically already covered my main points. There's a lot to talk about, but my main points are this. My questions were like, is it an obligation to be simcha? To be b'simcha? Is it important to be b'simcha? Is it an obligation? The answer is the Torah says it's an obligation to serve Hashem with simcha. That's for sure, because that's our relationship. However, Rabbi Nachman says even more, and it's totally obvious that he's right, is that it's an obligation to be b'simcha all the time. You always need to be happy, and you have to do what it takes to be happy. And because if you're not happy, so then first of all, you're not healthy, but also you're not. It takes you away from serving Hashem with happiness, and also it means you have a lack of appreciation and emunah. Like you're getting stuck on things which you don't understand. Where if you have emunah and appreciations, that means you're going to be happy all the time. Where does happiness come from? Happiness comes from getting what you want. This is another thing I want to add in here. Happiness comes from getting what you want. The Orchos Dickum says, when you get what people, the will of the person is in the depths of the person. This is me. Me is what I want. When I get what I want, I'm happy. When I don't get what I want, I'm not happy. So how can you be happy all the time? The answer is, what if you want to have what you have already, right? What if you want to be alive? So then you're happy. What if you want to be in a relationship with Hashem? So then you're happy. And what if you want to serve Hashem? So then you can always serve Hashem. So then you're happy. So then it turns out, and what if you appreciate all these things, So then you're getting what you want all the time. Right now, I woke up in the morning, I'm happy. Why? Because I woke up in the morning. Because I'm getting what I want. Whereas if what I want is something outside of myself, or what I want is to get money, let's say. And I think that when I get money, or when I get other kinds of desires, pleasure, fulfillment, so then I'm going to be happy. So if my happiness depends on that, so then I'm not always happy. I'm happy when I get it. And I'm not happy when I don't get it. If my happiness depends on other things that I don't have, so then my happiness is just contingent. You'll see people that look really happy. That's just because, and they're not doing good things, and they don't have emunah. They seem really happy. That's because at that moment they're getting what they want. But first of all, they're not so happy because it doesn't go very deep. Because like getting money, getting power, getting attention, we want those things. That's the things we want the most. The deeper part of the person wants meaning, wants connection to the bigger picture, wants a sense of mission, So second of all, if a person is happy based on getting what he wants in this world, so then if he ends up not having it at any point, he's going to be up and down. He's going to be on the edge. He's going to be always afraid that it's going to be taken away. So then that's the bad kind of happiness, which the Orchos Dickum is talking about, Benjamin. Yeah.
Yeah. So also, I feel like as humans, like what defines us is what we want to have accomplished, and happiness is when things get accomplished. Then as humans, as Tzilim Elokim, especially as Jews, right, money isn't actually the thing that would make us happy.
Why?
Ever. Why? Because that's not our purpose. Like, sure, if you're a squirrel, then the thing that will make you happy is to have the most acorns, right? But as a human, the thing that makes us the most happy is to do the human purpose, right? What we truly are is not things that just want money.
Right. Okay. But what if you have money and then you buy a nice car and you buy a nice house, and you have lots of friends and you have lots of influence?
That's still not the point of being a human.
Right. But you're happy. You are sort of happy, right? You have a happy because you wanted that and you got it. But first of all, it's a happiness that is contingent and insecure, because as soon as those things are gone, you're unhappy. And second of all, like you're saying, so I'm agreeing with you, is that it's a low level happiness. Rav Noach used to talk about 5 levels of happiness. And he said the lowest one is like physical pleasures and this worldly pleasures. And then it goes up. Relationships, sense of mission, like you're saying, Binyamin. But there's 2 problems with that kind of happiness. I have a lot of money, I have a lot of influence, I have a lot of friends, so then I will feel happy because I'm getting what I want. But first of all, it's not in my hands to keep it. And second of all, it's very shallow happiness compared to the deeper kind of happiness. Yeah.
But that's why I also see like this very big difference between like the simcha a person attain through emunah, because that's more like a spiritual simcha, a simcha that comes from within, than like the simcha that comes from without. Because normally, like, why is a person happy? Maybe he hear a joke, or he gets some money, he buys some things. But then you see like the simcha is dependent on things outside of him, and that can also always be like it can change. But if you have the simcha inside, then no matter what's happened outside, that simcha is solid. But that other simcha is like it's also simcha, but it's different.
Beautiful. Yes, very good. Okay, I want to show you now something else interesting about this. So it turns out that we just talked about a couple types of simcha. One kind of simcha is very good when you're happy because you have this certain relationship with Hashem, and you're happy because you have all this appreciation. Another kind of simcha is a bad one. You're happy to do bad things, right? That's not a good thing. Now there's another kind. I also want to bring. Look at the other first page again at the bottom. This goes further. Rabbi Nachman says like this. Look at this. He says there's another kind of happiness which is a sort of interim happiness. So this is really interesting. Rabbi Nachman says the rule is you have to go work very hard with all of your abilities to always be happy. Ki teva adam limshoch atzmo l'marishkara v'atzvut machbat pigei u'mikre hazman. He says because human nature pulls us towards unhappiness. There's something in human beings which is pulled downwards, and we often get pulled into a state of unhappiness because things happen. Things happen that we don't want to happen and that are hard for us to manage. So a person is naturally pulled down into a less happy stage or happy place. For kol adam imal yisurim, every person has suffering. Al kein tzarich lachriach et atzmo b'koach. Gadol liot b'simcha tamid. Therefore, a person has to force himself, Rabbi Nachman says, to always be happy. We have to bring about the means. If you're not happy, if something is actually pulling you downwards towards unhappiness, and that's part of human nature, so then we have to fight against it. We have to supersede. We have to transcend human nature and pull ourselves back to happiness. So that's sort of almost that's another shir also how a means of doing that. But one thing he says right here is very interesting. How do you do that? He says. So here's a very interesting thing. That means, what's a milah d'shtusa? It's something foolishness. Things that are like diversions. Things that have no essential purpose. Rabbi Nachman says you should do that also. So this is like a very healthy, interesting type of thing. That it's so important to be happy that when you're getting down, when things do get you down, or you're not in a good state, so then you should divert yourself. You should do things which are light, which are meaningless, which are entertaining, as long as they're not prohibited. So that's very, very important. It's a very interesting thing, this. He says, because we're not always in this sense of feeling that we're in a sense of mission. We have this deep emunah. Our emunah our emunah is always a work in progress. And sometimes things get us down, and human being is pulled downwards naturally. What happens when you start to get pulled down? So then you have to realize that, okay, if I'm not happy, then nothing else matters. Because you have to be b'simcha tamid. So the first thing is to get yourself happy. One way to get yourself happy is there's other ways, there's deeper ways also, but this is the lowest way. This is the base. That you divert yourself. You do something light. There's different things people do. They do social things. They do exercise. They do all kinds of sports. They're reading. different kinds of things people do to make themselves, bring themselves back to a place of simcha. And then from there it goes back to the other. Then you start to go back to things like learning Torah and other things like that, which actually bring out a deeper simcha, right? And other kinds of things you do, which bring you to the deeper level of simcha. But it's important to be b'simcha tamid. So this type of simcha is like an intermediate simcha. So this is like a, yeah. Any questions here? I wanted to say something else. Just something slipped my mind. I just want to add something else. Any comments here? Further? So let me recap a little bit. So it turns out that simcha is for sure an obligation when you're serving Hashem. And we're about to have a Yom Tov, and it's an obligation of Yom Tov to be b'simcha. How are you b'simcha? Well, first of all, we eat and we drink. We do these light things which bring up our nature of happiness. And then we're davening and we're learning and we're experiencing the experience of the Yom Tov. It's in the air. It brings us to simcha if you connect to it. You know, all the aspects of it. And so we're coming to the Yom Tov now, and that's mitzvah to be simcha. And it's mitzvah whenever you're serving Hashem to be b'simcha. And then not only that, it's a mitzvah to be b'simcha all the time. Because that makes a person, that's the health of a person. Well, I wanted to tell you something else, that's it. One more thing, let me say one thing. Very interesting is Shem Shmuel. It says in the story, support for this idea in Rabbi Nachman. Shem Shmuel is one of the Hasidic greats. So it says like this, by the 12 tribes, in the story with Yosef and the tribes, when they started to have trouble together. So it says at a certain point that Yaakov Avinu, he was the greatest person in the world, you know, and he was favoring Yosef. And he seemed to be pushing the rest of them away. And they were getting really discouraged. And everyone wanted to get close to Yaakov and to help become who he could become. And meanwhile, Yaakov is bringing Joseph near and pushing them out. So they were getting discouraged. And then it says they went to feed their sheep in Shechem. So the Gemara says interesting things. The Gemara says they weren't going to feed their sheep, they were going to feed themselves. There's the dots on it. And the Gemara says they were going to feed themselves. So Shem Shmuel says, what does it mean they're going to feed themselves? These are tzaddikim. He says they were about to get depressed. They were suffering with this, their simcha was getting down. They were feeling like pushed out, you know? And so what do you do when you're feeling down? You cheer yourself up. So they were going to feed themselves, means they were going to pick up their spirits by going to Shechem. Shechem is a place where just by going there, it strengthens your sense of self. There's something about the place of Shechem, you know, all kinds of crazy things happen, good and bad things happen in Shechem. Because when you're there, you feel like important. It's like sort of like, you know, like if you go to the Alps, you know, go up on the Alps, so you feel, oh, wow, you know, here I'm looking down on the whole world. So Shechem, the place for Shechem is like that. I don't know why exactly, but it's a very strong place. So they're going to Shechem to cheer themselves up. So Shem Shmuel says the same, because the worst thing in the world is to be down. Go to cheer yourself up, first of all, if you're down, because you have to maintain your simcha. And then you go back to the higher forms of simcha. So this is a touching on the subject, yeah. Chaim?
I just want to say two things that made me think of. One thing was I sometimes think of simcha as very binary. It's like you're in simcha, or you're not in simcha. And you know, someone that is in simcha is running around skipping and singing songs.
Yeah.
And it's like that. And someone without simcha is down and sad and all that kind of way. But I feel like maybe the simcha that maybe Rabbi Nachman is talking about might be a little more complicated.
Yes, yes.
And that each emotion that we have can be compiled of multiple different emotions and different ratios. You know?
Yes.
And then in that kind of way you can so even if someone has, because I mean the struggles of life make it so that it's not very.
You're not always dancing around.
It's not realistic to expect someone to have it as an avodas Hashem to always be dancing through the struggles of life. Right. But
you're not always in a state of pleasure, that's for sure.
But you can always have a certain element of simcha in every emotion where you can identify with that. Still,
very
right?
good.
You can always see
So Balatanya says on this note, he says that simcha is not a really strong feeling in a certain sense. He says it's almost like the sense of smell. It's something very subtle. It's a certain inner. I would explain that simcha is a certain inner positivity you have. You're not discouraged. You didn't give up. You know, you have a positive outlook and a certain buoyancy. Now that gets stronger, then it's more and more felt, but it can be constant on some level, even when things are not going, so easily, or there's difficulty, or there's even pain. There could still be simcha. Very good.
The only other thing I want to say is I heard like a really good mushroom. You were talking about how like enjoying food and all this kind of stuff to like take you up and bring you
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
And that made a lot of sense to me. I just had heard one time that like a mushroom describing the soul in the body as like someone who was captured by like someone. You can imagine if you were like captured by an enemy group, and you really want to get back and start enjoying things the way that you like to enjoy them, which is like the spiritual enjoyment. But the enemy is like got you captive there. Like your body has you captive there. And one of the ways that we can escape that is the person gets the enemy drunk. And then when the enemy is drunk, they're enjoying themselves and they're having a great time. And then you can have the freedom to enjoy yourself and have your great. You can kind of say that like the soul and the body. Like,
Very good.
you eat and all this to put your body happy so that
Yeah.
you can get the spiritual
Right.
upliftment.
Right. And the thing about Yom Tov is that's the environment's made for that. Like when it's a regular day, so we don't have these big feasts so much. On Yom Tov, when we're actually in the atmosphere where the whole thing is like trending towards that actual spiritual simcha, so then it brings it out like that. It's the best time for that. Okay, very good. Yeah, shkoyach.
That's what I want.
Шкода, так,